Hello, hi there. I'm Paul, and I'm from TTM English, and we help people to pass their exams. Now, an important thing for us to be aware of is that TTM English is part of a big company called TTM Healthcare. Okay, and what we do is we help people to find jobs in the UK, so we understand the challenges and the difficulties that come with going passing your test, trying to take your test, and then going and having your first job in the UK. So day one, which is what is being focused on here, is really, really important. So on day one, you need to be communicating with your colleagues. You need to be understanding things. You need to be prioritizing information and communicating with your colleagues. And that's what we're going to look at today. I'm going to focus on listening part B. And what we're going to do is we're going to build up to a few examples with a little bit of prioritization language. And we're also going to talk about why it's how to have a look at the part B questions. Okay, so first of all, as you know, we're a PPP, premium preparation provider. That's why we're here today. Now, these are your colleagues. Okay, on your first day, you go in. Everyone, it doesn't make any difference what language you're in. Whenever you have your first day in a new job, you always feel a bit nervous, a bit scared, and you want to make a good impression. So these are your colleagues on your first day, and what you want to do is make a great impression, and that means taking in the most important information. So there could be things like guidance and information and instructions from your managers, from your colleagues. Oh, don't do that. Make sure you do this. And it's really important to be ready for that. And you want to make a good impression. And in order to do that, you need to think about the language that you're listening to. What makes a piece of information be more important than another piece of information? Someone might give you a whole list of instructions, but there's one particular part which is the most important part for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a part B question now, and then we'll learn some prioritization language, and then we'll do some examples. Okay, so this is what an OET listening part B question typically looks like. Okay, now you get a question, and then you've got three options, and you'll hear a short audio extract. And what you have to do is you have to think to yourself, what's the purpose of this particular text that I'm listening to? Now, when we look at this, we have to focus on this part here, which we call the question stem. Now, the question stem is going to tell us what we really should be focusing on. Now, there's one word here in that question stem that's very important, and I don't know if anyone can see it now, but for me, it sticks out, and that's the word insist. Okay? If you insist on something, you're not asking for it, you're not requesting it, you're saying it has to happen. It's really important. So in order to recognize what has to happen, what's really important, we'll have to think about language like this, okay? Language of priority. You probably know all of these phrases. There might be some words you might not know, but don't forget. If somebody says don't forget something to you, then you have to think, okay, I have to remember that. It's essential that. Make sure you do something. Something is necessary for all staff. For instance, it could be hand hygiene, washing your hands every time you leave and enter the ward. Something is a necessity. So necessity is the noun form of necessary. Okay, it's imperative. Now that might be a new word, imperative. It's something that often comes up in OET. It's quite formal register. It's imperative means it's essential, it's necessary. And then we've got something as simple as the priority is. So just have a look at that language now for just 10 seconds. Don't forget, it's essential that. Make sure something is necessary, something is a necessity, it's imperative that, the priority is. Okay, have a think about those. And when we go and do some listening in a moment, that kind of language will feature. Okay, let's get ourselves onto some questions then. All right, I'm going to give you 20 seconds just to look at this question again and prepare yourself before we do the audio. So starting now, 20 seconds. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Let's have some audio, please.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the team. Today, I'm going to give you an induction, show you around the ward, and help you settle in. The first thing I'd like to discuss is your locker and personal space. You all have your own locker, which you can claim after lunch. All you have to do is fill out a name tag and stick it to the door. You'll have to provide your own padlock for your locker. Just remember, it can take up to an hour for the maintenance team to come and snip the lock when people forget their keys. Now, it is essential that the department has a clear idea of who is present and who is not, in line with the hospital policy. So make sure you sign in and out when coming and going. Don't worry about breaks for lunch or if you pop to another ward.
Sorry, Paul, you're muted.
Sorry, guys, I just forgot to put myself back on. Okay, yeah, so we can see here clearly we've got most of people have gone for B. We've got some people who've gone for don't forget the keys. We've got most people, 85%, and that's absolutely right. Okay, B is the correct answer. And let's have a look why. Okay, look at the language here. Now, it is essential that, remember, that's the priority language that we heard earlier. It is essential that the department has a clear idea of who is present. So make sure, let me just have a drink of water. Sorry, guys. Make sure you sign in and sign out when coming and going. So that's really important. We've got that priority language that we could hear in that example. But with OET listening and also in real life, we need to be aware that we don't just hear the evidence which gives us the answer. There's also evidence that says this is not the answer. So if we look at the distractors, that's what we call them. These are things inside of the listening that make you think, oh, maybe that's the answer. The reason that you can identify them as distractors is the language that they use. So if we look at why answer A is not correct, look at the modal verb here. Okay, you all have your own locker, so you can claim after lunch. So you can, well, that doesn't mean you must. That doesn't mean you have to, that you shouldn't forget to do it. There's no priority there. And the last one, see, it can take up to an hour for the maintenance team to come and snip the lock when people forget. Okay, that's just some advice. There's no language of prioritization there. There's nothing that says you must do this. Don't forget to do this. Make sure you do that. But when we look at the previous one, it is essential that as soon as you hear it's essential that, you know, I should prioritize this information. Make sure. Okay, that means you have to remember. Okay, let's go and do another example, another question. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 seconds this time. Everyone just read that. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Let's have some audio.
Hi, okay, let's start the handover.
No worries. Right, before we begin, I have the medication list here for you to follow later on after breakfast.
Great.
Well, it was a straightforward night apart from Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, he had a total knee replacement 2 days ago. He slipped trying to get out of bed on his way to the bathroom at about 3 a.m. Luckily, I was nearby, so I prevented him from falling to the floor.
Right. Does he have any injuries?
Thankfully not. I've made a note of what happened if you'd like to check. He was shaken though.
I can't understand why.
Yes. I'm concerned that he will have a bit of anxiety about getting out of bed in the future.
You're right. It's important that he learns from it.
Actually, I wouldn't dwell on what happened with him. The priority now is to keep his confidence up. He is awake now. It would be a good idea if you had a chat with him. If he mentions the incident, just ignore it and get him to focus on his goals.
Right, okay, so let's open up the next poll, please. Let's see what kind of answers we've got coming through here. So what does the nurse need to do next? Is that poll? Okay, right, okay, so let's have a look. We've got a lot of people going for A. We've got some people doing B and C. That's interesting. Okay, now that's understandable. Now the answer is A, okay? Right, okay, so I think that most people are going for A. Now, let's do the same thing that we did in sample question 1. Let's have a check and see what is the language which gives us the answer A. So it's just as much about the prioritization language for the positive as for the answers, the options which are not correct. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So we've got this dialogue between two nurses doing a handover, and the answer came right at the end there. And look at the language, the priority now. As we said at the beginning when we were looking at the prioritization language, the priority now is to keep his confidence up. So as soon as you hear the priority, your ears should go ding, and you should start listening. This is where the answer is. Okay, so it would be a good idea to have a chat with him. Okay, so if we go back, check how the patient is. That's what comes with the priority now. Okay, so why are B and C not correct? Well, again, let's look at the language. So B, it says, I have the medication list here for you to follow later on after breakfast. If it's later on, that's not a priority. Okay, if it's a priority, then we need to do it. Okay, C, I've made a note of what happened if you'd like to check it. Okay, if you'd like to check it, again, that's not a priority, that's an offer. So again, the language really helps us. We've identified here the priority now. Okay, so this is the kind of skill, the kind of language that can help you when you come to your first day. I think we've got time for just one more. Okay, so I'll give you 10 seconds again, just to have a look at these options, starting now. Okay, so let's start that audio. We're going to listen to a doctor assessing another doctor on their recent performance. So let's start that audio.
Right then, I'd like to go through some feedback about your recent practical assessment. It started well. You made some good inquiries with a combination of open and closed questions and ascertained an accurate understanding of the patient's physical condition. A good example of this was asking the patient to describe the pain on a scale of 1 to 10. However, the physical aspect is not the only issue with a patient who has recently undergone such a significant operation ahead of a potential discharge. I found that your investigations of his emotional state were incomplete. It is imperative to get a 360-degree understanding of a patient before making any recommendations. I suggest that in future, you build on your initial inquiries with some more directed questions regarding the patient's comfort, sleep, and expectations post-discharge. The patient will not find these questions difficult. This will give you a rounded idea of the patient's well-being.
Muted, Paul.
I've done it again. I'm sorry, guys. So I'm not going to do a poll. We don't have much time left, but the answer there was C. Okay. So I found that your investigations of emotional state were incomplete, and we found that the language of prioritization was here. It is imperative to get a 360-degree understanding of a patient. Okay, so what you can see in all of these texts is that if we study OET and we do Part B, what we find is that if we prepare for OET, we prepare for real life. And I echo what Steve said. Okay, and you need to improve your listening skills before the test in a lot of ways. I think that's going to come up in the Q&A in a moment. And also, don't forget the grammar is really important as well. Okay, so hit the ground running, pass your OET, and be ready for your first day in the UK. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.